I
If
know exactly what that means.
Christ is my brother and he says he's the Son of God, that means I'm a slice of God.
That's exactly what that means.
That's exact, but it's not.
Nope, it is not. Touched on it earlier that the rocks and the minerals and the plains all know that they are God. The animals all know that they are God. We are on a plane of existence that we are the only ones that don't know, and everything got here. And one of those things is I've grown up in a body to where I've been in near constant daily pain for the vast majority of my life. This goes back to as young as I can remember, as far as like age 4 or 5, I was having tremendous stomach and digestive problems that were causing me great pain, and that lasted me all the way through my mid 20s. And after that, I was afflicted with other symptoms of physical pain in my body. My nervous system actually started to quote unquote turn on me, for instance.
Joseph Stedler.
Greetings and salutations.
It's been a long time since you and I have sat across a virtual table.
Indeed.
I've been able to have a conversation, particularly at this depth. So I'm kind of excited. I'd like to introduce you, and I'll introduce myself real quick too. So my name is James Ewing, and I started a journey quite a few years back, and it turned into a book that I intended to write called Spiritual Chaos. That's the name of this podcast. In reality, I ended up publishing my first book, Through the Facade, and it was nothing like what I originally envisioned. It was basically a note, a section of sort of advice, pieces of advice to my younger self. And but I've been on this path of learning how to navigate life and why I'm here for a long time. And to introduce Joseph Stedler, so he is, from as near as I can tell, one of the most genius people I've ever worked with. And so you worked for me at my company, ETCI, 15 years ago, right?
It's been a while. Yeah.
Wow. And you and I have kept in touch over the years, just haphazardly. But as I dove further and further into this sort of mindscape, if you will, of spirituality and how it relates to our current political environment, this amazingly divisive political landscape that we're finding ourselves in, I can't seem to disconnect it from spirituality. For me, at least, it is completely tied together. And so you and I have had some interactions on Facebook, and what I found that was so fascinating is that you're not only passionate about what you believe in, but that you are also very articulate and studied on it. And so that's why I wanted to bring you on the podcast and really just learn from you. And so my goal with this is to keep it completely open-ended. I want this to be a forum for you to articulate your ideas to me. Let me let you know that I am completely open-minded about whatever it is you have to say. And so throughout this conversation, I'd like you to feel free to speak your mind and to share your experiences with others. So if you would, why don't you catch me up on how you came to be the Joseph Stedler that you are now? Because it's been a minute. So
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for those kind words of introduction. It's always nice to hear kind things about you said, especially when, me myself often struggle to see some of the positivity and some of the positive ways that I affect others. I don't see it. My wife sees it. My friends see it. I don't see it. So it's really, really nice to hear it. So first of all, I appreciate that. To answer your question of how I got to be where I am today, honestly, I mean, it's a culmination of a life's journey, and I won't go through my entire life. That's really unnecessary. But there are a few key things that I do feel are very, very pertinent to what got me to where I am and how I got here. And one of those things is I've grown up in a body to where I've been in near constant daily pain for the vast majority of my life. This goes back to as young as I can remember, as far as like age 4 or 5. I was having tremendous stomach and digestive problems that were causing me great pain, and that lasted me all the way through my mid-20s. And after that, I was afflicted with other symptoms of physical pain in my body. My nervous system actually started to quote unquote turn on me, for instance. So I'm dealing with that. Well, when you're dealing with something as in your face as daily nonstop pain, you obviously start to question why. Well, as a child, my mom sent me to all kinds of specialists and whatnot, trying to get answers to why I was in such pain. And every specialist that we saw always came back with, well, all the tests come back clean, you look completely fine, you're normal, so therefore you must have X. And the X that they gave me was IBS, which I've come to learn is the generic catch-all for when really they don't really understand what's going on. Long story short.
And for those of us who don't know.
IBS is irritable bowel syndrome. It's what I've come to understand, that when many people, not just me, but many people have tremendous problems in their digestive system. And if they go see Western allopathic doctors, they run all kinds of tests. And if those tests come back clean and negative, well, they have no explanation to give you, but they have to give you an explanation. So the explanation they gave me, and they give a lot of people, is the pathology of IBS. Anyway, so that searching for why, number one, why am I afflicted with so much pain, and why have I been afflicted with so much pain for the majority of my life? And two, the second thing that's really gotten me to this point is, as I've shared with you, and I guess I'll share with everybody now, I grew up Catholic. I grew up very Catholic. What I mean by that is I was going to Sunday school every week. I was going to church every week, sometimes multiple times a week. I was an altar boy. I graduated to a Eucharistic minister. And at one point in time, I was actually going to be a priest. However, that was dashed when growing up I saw a great deal of conflict within the religion I was studying under. And those conflicts could not be resolved by me asking the priests or the nuns, because anytime I would bring up a question of, well, this doesn't make sense to me, why is this, when this clearly contradicts what you just told me, I would get in trouble. So, okay, I'm now found in a situation to where no people on this planet can seemingly tell me why I'm in pain. The higher source that we are taught, or at least that I was taught to look toward for all of this, the message I'm being sent from them is conflicting. So from a very, very early age, I knew something was not right with me, and also consequently with the world. I knew the religion that I was growing up in, something was wrong. I wasn't being taught and told everything. And so therefore, when I was about 17, I divorced myself from all religion altogether. But I did not divorce myself from spirituality. Spirituality has been the cornerstone of my life forever, as long as I can remember. Faith is one of my strongest abilities. And so that has sent me on a prayer. That has sent me on a journey, actually. Once I found out one thing I've been lied to about, and I go and research and try to find the answer to that, and I find the answer, I inevitably find 5 other things that I've been lied to about. So that sends me on another journey of 5 different rabbit holes to go down, and those rabbit holes lead to other rabbit holes. So long story short, right around 2001, September 11, 2001, that was like my great big awakening. And it was for a lot of people, actually. What I witnessed with my own eyes, what I did with the research that I did in my own time, was not matching up with the official story being given to me on the mass level. In fact, it was the official story that was given to everybody, and it just did not add up. It just did not make any sense to me whatsoever. And so at that point, I realized that was like the confirmation for me. Up until that point, I suspected something was wrong in this world. That was the confirmation to me that no, something is very, very wrong in this world. And that led me to a journey of truth, as I call it, to try to get to the bottom of this. And that's the background to what has gotten me to where I am today.
So I'm thinking that you and I worked together when September 11th happened.
No, we were together after that. It was after. It was definitely after. I was working at Club Corp at the time, and in fact, I remember sitting in the parking garage listening to the radio as the planes were hitting the towers. So no, we were definitely together after that point. But But yeah, I know that was a great awakening moment for many people, and I know for me that was my confirmation, and that just cemented within myself that this journey I'm on, this desire within me to find truth where I'm not seeing truth being presented to me in anything I look at, just grew to a point to where it was all consuming. So a lot of times when people would go out on Friday, Saturday night, go drinking, go to the club, go whatever, that was never my thing. My thing was to be home and my head at the time in a book, or when the internet was big, into the internet, doing research and whatnot. So I've spent many hours and nights and so on and so forth researching anything that comes up in these topics. What I want to say and what I say to anybody I talk to this stuff about, and I thank you for saying that you've got an open mind to talk about whatever comes up. What I always say is what I present is my version of as close to the truth as I can get in this moment in time right now. Meaning my belief system has changed dramatically many times over the course of this awakening. I've had to undo a lot of the learning and the programming that was done into me as a child. You have to undo all of that to get to a point to where you can start to assimilate the new, and the new makes sense. So what I'm talking about, this stuff is going to challenge a lot of people's belief systems, and I hope so. That's the point of this conversation, I think.
Oh, it is for me, and we talked yesterday briefly, and I'm confused within my own mind because I don't know why I have to do this, but I don't have a choice. Like, there is a part of me that lived even after September 11th. I lived, I hate to say it, but with my head in the sand. You caught something when that happened and picked up on something that I did not. And it's weird. You're younger than me, I think.
Mhm.
I'm 47.
I'm 39.
So you're younger than me by 8 years. And yet, and here you were working for me, but in reality, you helped me build the architecture for ultimately what became cloud computing. I don't know if you realize this, but you and I were on the absolute front end of cloud computing. Like, literally what we created with multi-tenant hosting had not been created yet, and VMware had not called it cloud computing. So thank you for that, by the way. You're the reason I'm in the seat that I'm in today. Literally. Like, you are one of the key players in what created a cloud computing platform that today is still running banks and credit unions in the United States on a cloud computing platform, the largest in the world, literally. And now we're moving it to Microsoft Azure. We're the second largest Azure partner. So you've had a tremendous impact on the world from a technology. I guess I would say it's not just technological. That was where I was going, but it's actually a lifestyle thing. Because all of the people that are our clients today, even though we don't work together anymore, are a client of this cloud because of the architecture that you helped me articulate. It wasn't necessarily that, I designed it or you designed it by ourselves. We did it together with several other people, but you helped write it out. And so it was a beautiful thing. But what's interesting is your mind was, I guess, perhaps more open to the possibility that what we were hearing as far as a media narrative, for lack of a better term, maybe shouldn't be trusted as the de facto truth at that time. And my mind was not. I think I was going through a divorce, and I think I was chasing women at that time. And it just, you talked about other people were going to the bars on Friday night, and that was me,
Well, that's my friends.
And so, yeah, but I wasn't in that camp. So I was in that camp. I was out, chasing tail, so to speak. And so you've had a lot more time to think about and study and research this sort of thing than I have. And I think props to you, by the way, for recognizing that not everything you hear is true. from such an early age, to be honest. And I think that's what we're heading into today. I think we're heading into a time when the generation that is viewing the news today, they're not reading newspapers like they were. They're not looking at only CNN, CNBC, ABC. They're looking at YouTube and Facebook,
Twitter.
Yep. And they're realizing that there is a common narrative, right? But it's on the mainstream media side. But maybe that's not to be trusted wholeheartedly, without question, right? And I didn't have that mindset. So take me through. Let me tell you real quick, and our audience. What happened with me is a friend of mine, my best friend, who we hung out all the time, said to me one day, well, you need to look up Tower 7. And I said, oh, wait, don't tell me you're one of those 9/11 conspiracy theorists. Come on, man. We're best buds. We hang out every day. Don't tell me that. He goes, look, I'm not going to even tell you my opinion. I'm just going to say, look it up. And it blew my mind. This is 10 years after it happened. So this was 2011 for me. 10 years after you've probably been researching this sort of thing, right? So you get a lot more background and history than I do on it. For me, 10 years ago, it hit, and I, all of a sudden, it was terrifying, to be honest, because the rug had already been pulled out from underneath me when it came to religion. When I went through my divorce, I realized that God could not be the same God, if God existed at all, could not be the same God that I had been brought up to believe in. So I had already come to that conclusion, and that rocked my world. And then to realize that I couldn't trust everything I heard on the media or from the government rocked my world again. And so I'm just now coming to terms with the idea that not only is it okay that I don't trust everything I read or hear, but that I have no choice now. Like, I can't go to sleep at night unless I bring light to other people that are open to it. Like, it's almost a compulsion. And I don't know how you word that, but we talked about it yesterday, and you were like, yes, it should be. Can you describe that to our listeners? I mean, why is it a compulsion for me?
Sure, definitely. Before I answer that, and I definitely will answer that, I do want to say something because you brought up a phrase that is commonly brought up when we talk about things like this: conspiracy theory. Let me ask you a question. Do you know where the phrase conspiracy theory originated from?
I have no idea. That's a good point.
That term didn't exist prior to the JFK assassination. The CIA ran a PSYOP, psychological operation, basically inventing the term conspiracy theory and conspiracy theorists to automatically dissuade people from listening to these conspiracy theorists who are telling a different narrative than the official narrative. The PSYOP was to conceal the truth by basically implanting default reactions within people when they hear something that is not the official narrative. And that was how the term conspiracy theory came about. So conspiracy theory was meant to be a slanderous term, tinfoil wearing, nutballs.
Tinfoil hat wearing, crazy people.
Yes.
And you must be crazy if you believe there's a conspiracy behind this.
Exactly. So that is where the term and the phrase came from. So it's a PSYOP. Conspiracy exists. Conspiracy theories become conspiracy fact. And that's one thing that, as we talk about this stuff, hopefully people will start to open their mind to that in research. So getting back to, there's many different ways we could take this conversation, but I'll take the conversation back to kind of where we started yesterday, because this is, I believe, what the crux of your question was, and that is, why do you personally feel such a longing, not really a longing, but such a motivation, an urge, a desire to now start to figure out the truth? When you find the truth, now spread the truth.
Right. It's almost like it's like this religion whereby I feel compelled to show others that there might be something going on that you're absolutely not aware of, that you might be being brainwashed. I don't know where that compulsion comes from.
Well, that compulsion comes from an intelligence that is not of this lifetime. So you talk about how you cannot divorce what's going on politically with spirituality. Neither can I. Neither can I. Because I believe that everything we're seeing play out in this world right now, including these impeachment hearings of Trump and all the negative discourse in the media concerning this administration, so on and so forth, it's all part of the Great Awakening. What's going on right now is the Great Awakening. And this is a spiritual thing. This is not something that, a couple of people coined the term and, that's what we're calling this now. No. This is actually a spiritual thing. The urging that you're feeling within yourself is not the James Ewing that you recognize yourself as. It's not the ego layer. The ego not being a bad thing. People hear the term ego and they automatically think of, big head, egomaniacs and whatnot. That's not what I'm referring to. Ego is simply the device that God created within us to give us separation between him and himself, or him and ourselves. And we can talk more about that if you want. I can delve more into that in a minute. But the ego is what we associate with who we are in this lifetime. I am Joseph Stedler. Everything I associate about Joseph Stedler, my personality, my thoughts, my beliefs, that's all part of my ego. But that's not who I am. That's not who I truly am. That's just the more or less the interface that I work in this physical realm. And so if that's not who I really am, then okay, who am I really? Well, any of us who are religious believe we have a soul. Now, what the soul is differs between religions and different spiritual beliefs and whatnot, but the crux, the core of what basically all major religions teach is that we have a divine spark within us. We have a soul, and that soul is everlasting. It persists beyond death. There is no death. Death is an illusion. Well, the part where mainstream religion really breaks down is at this point right here. And because in the Catholic Church, and I can speak only for the Catholic Church, because I've been to a Baptist church, but I didn't grow up Baptist. So I'm just speaking purely from my point of view and my experiences alone in the Catholic Church. But we were taught, endlessly taught, that this was our one life, our one chance to get it right. We do good in this life, we go to heaven. If we don't do good in this life, we go to hell. And that's it. That's what we were taught. It was beaten into me, literally beaten into me.
Yeah. Almost
Yes.
like race.
It is religion, and this is gonna ruffle some feathers, but religion is a form of control. Religion is a control structure. Spirituality is not. I do want to make that distinction. So just because you believe in God, just because you believe in Jesus, you believe in Mary, you believe in the saints, the apostles, disciples, all this stuff, you can divorce yourself from religion and still keep those beliefs. And in fact, once you divorce yourself from religion and that control structure, because the way it controls you is not by openly telling you lies, it's by omitting truths. It's by not giving you the complete picture. And the way
right there and ask a question, because that's really deep. And I want to repeat what you just said, because I want to make sure that people get that, because I didn't know that you and I would agree on that so succinctly, but I vehemently agree. Like, that is absolutely true, that you can keep your love for Christ, your love for God, your love for your fellow man, You can call yourself a Christian and follow Christ's teachings, and yet not call yourself a Catholic
Yep.
or a Baptist.
Yep.
And not subscribe to the ideas of heaven and hell as they have been shoved down your throat in the past. That's a phenomenal shift for most people from a religious perspective, because it's antithetical to a lot of religious dogma and doctrine. So did I state that right? Does that still match with what you're talking about?
For sure, and I could even carry that further.
Yeah, take us further. I just wanted to reiterate that so that people who are watching this really get it.
So what I want to talk about too is, again, I come from a pure spiritual background. And so I talk a lot in terms of the divine masculine and the divine feminine. When the teachings of Christ were taken over, were co-opted. Okay, the Bible is not the unfettered word of God. That is another thing that was beaten into us. I have since learned that's very easy to find out. It's not hard at all, that the Bible has been translated and retranslated and retranslated, not for accuracy, but to fit a narrative. Certain books have been purposely kept out of the Bible to keep the people ignorant of very strong and profound spiritual truths. The book of Enoch is like the first one that pops in my mind. And also along with that has been the utter stomping out of the divine feminine.
That's true. Yep. And that's a travesty, by the way. But anyway, keep going.
So if you look at it, and if you don't understand what I'm saying when I say that, if you are Catholic listening to this, go to church and look around. Who are the priests? Who are the altar boys? Who are the deacons? Who's the Pope? Who's the cardinals? Where are the women? There are no women anywhere. This is by design. There is this whole battle within our society right now, and it's an artificial battle. Don't get it twisted. It's an artificial battle. But there's this whole battle within our community now, or our society now, of, there's 37 genders or whatever number that they pulled out of the air this time. There's two. There's the divine feminine, the divine masculine. Everybody has both in them at the same time. It's just that when we are incarnated into this world, we happen to pick a lens, so to speak, the lens of masculine or the lens of feminine, to use as our primary means of interacting in this world. So I myself, clearly a man, I have woman in me, I have divine feminine in me. That's where my compassion comes from. It's where my deep love and nurturing comes from, of my children, of nature. Okay?
My strength. Empathy as well.
Empathy, compassion. These are all divine feminine qualities. You need those to be pretty much in 50-50 balance and harmony within yourself to be a fully functioning human being on this planet. And the thing is, there has been a concerted effort, a very purposeful effort by the Dark Ones, and I'm getting spiritual again, by the Dark Ones, to stomp out completely from this planet divine feminine. And it's mirrored in everything that we see in our religious control structures, like I've already iterated and whatnot. So, sorry, I may have gotten a little bit off track from what the original question was. So if you want to bring me back, feel free.
No, this is great. I'll tell you, I'd like to explore this a little bit more. So for those of you who are listening who have never heard of divine feminine or divine masculine, let me bring that into perspective. So what we're talking about are energies. And Joseph, step in anytime, but I'm going to try to articulate it in layman's terms so that people that are following understand it. What I think we're talking about are energies within individual people. It doesn't matter whether you've got a penis or a vagina. This isn't about physical sex or biological sex. This is about spiritual energies that lean us towards thinking logically and being able to focus on one thing at a time. That's a masculine energy type. And the masculine energy type seeks to control the environment and seeks to uh, use logic to make decisions. The feminine energy type seeks to flow with the environment, seeks to uh, flow with others and empathize with others and nurture. And so the dance of the masculine versus feminine energy is one versus, or not versus, because it's not combative, but it is thinking as compared to feeling. So if you've ever taken a Myers-Briggs test, for example, which most people probably have, it's a 16 personalities test, very common. The Myers-Briggs personality type has 4 letters, primarily. The 16 personalities has a fifth. But for example, I used to be an ENTP, which is extroverted, intuitive, thinking. That's the 3rd letter. And then P is perceptive. So, but that 3rd letter is either a T or an F. And when you take the Myers-Briggs, you end up with yourself on a scale for each letter. The 3rd letter indicates your default feminine, in my opinion, feeling versus thinking, masculine, personality type. And it shifts, not just throughout your life, but on a day-to-day basis. Like if you take the Myers-Briggs in the morning and then don't eat anything, and maybe you're having your period, and then you take the test in the evening, you're going to show up with different results. Because the thinking versus feeling piece is the dance between the feminine and masculine within yourself, right? So I try to look at that feminine and masculine as a divine structure that in the best humans, the most balanced humans, is balanced. And I was actually really stoked. It sounds strange, but especially if you're a guy and you're like, I don't want to have any feminine in me, I'm going to be masculine. No. Get out of that mindset, because this isn't about masculinity. This is about the divine masculine and the divine feminine working through us, okay? And I remember after I had sort of a spiritual awakening, and I'm not talking woke as the Dems call it woke. I'm talking awake as to, I realized I was a spiritual being having a human experience and not the other way around. That's what my version of awakened was. And I took the test one and found myself at 50% thinking and 50% feeling. And prior, like 10 years ago, I'd taken the test and I was at 80% thinking and 20% feeling. So what the awakening did, the spiritual awakening did for me, is I all of a sudden felt empathy as a result of the divine feminine in myself being awakened. So that's what we're talking about. Now, let's go back to what you talked about as it pertained to the hijacking of Christ's teaching and the Bible to remove the divine feminine from it. I wanted to preface that. Sorry.
Sure. No. Dad, thanks for bringing me back, because I'd actually forgotten where I started, because oftentimes I go down rabbit holes and I get too far deep and I forget the source.
A lot of people aren't familiar with these terms, and they're going to think masculine means male and feminine means female. No. They have to do with energies. And so I want to preface all of that and now continue.
That is absolutely true. What I'm describing are energies, not what we think of as male masculinity versus female femininity. That's not what I'm referring to. So anyway, going back to the hijacking and the deliberate stomping out, and I say it in that way because that's literally what they did. They stomped out the divine feminine from all power positions in basically in all society, starting with the religious castes and then moving over to all the political structure and so on and so forth. What that does, though, okay, so people are like, okay, well, I can see that in my own church. There's no women priests. There's no women, anywhere in the Vatican. So I can kind of maybe see what you're talking about. But what does that do? So what? Okay. So let me share with you something. Again, we're talking about energies, and so I want to. This is like a diversion point where I can go many different directions. So I'm trying to determine which way I want to go. But one thing
and figure it out, and then I'll roll with.
Well, for instance, like we just talked about, you need everybody has within them the divine masculine and the divine feminine, and they need to pretty much be in 50-50% harmony within yourself for you to be a fully functioning, healthy human being. Any distortion either way, you start to get problems. And what I really, really like is when the divine feminine and the divine male come together. Okay, there's an old saying that talks about um, I'm not going to remember word for word, but the gist of it is sex with a woman takes the war out of a man. Okay,
Oh, never
so
heard.
so what so and this falls in line with the whole concept of the this is going to really trigger some people, but there's a concept of the sacred whore, or the sacred prostitute. That's maybe a little bit too deep down the rabbit hole for some people, but the gist of it is, in pre-patriarchal times, we live in patriarchal times. Our society is completely dominated around the male. Prior to this, society was matriarchal. The women ruled everything, and society looked very, very different. And there are people who could speak on those differences better than I, but there are some very key differences which I could talk to about. One being there was virtually no war under this paradigm. Women don't want to go to war. Women don't want to fight wars. That's a male thing. In fact, that's a male, distorted male thing. It's not true male masculine energy. It's a distortion. Another key difference is in basically just pure policies of the society. How does society take care of itself? Whereas we are now in a society of dog eat dog, get mine before you get it. There's all these other adages. Whereas before, when women ruled, they ruled from a place of compassion and empathy for all, not for just self. So society, again, looked very, very different than it does today. Needless to say, all of this is done at a spiritual level for spiritual reasons, because this planet that we are on, and James, you and I talked about this yesterday, and I definitely want to bring this point up for people listening to us. This planet that we're on is special. We are very special. I'll talk quickly about why we as humans are special. And this goes directly into the different emotions and energies that you were just talking about, James. We as human beings, anybody can understand this. We as human beings have a huge spectrum of emotions, from the dark all the way to the light, and all the varying gradations of gray in between. So come to find out, that's not common in the universe. Come to find out, the emotional spectrum that human beings have is far beyond what most living beings in this universe have. And now we're talking about extraterrestrial life, and yes, extraterrestrial life exists, and we can definitely talk more about that if you want, but just for the sake of this conversation, most life in the universe has a much narrower band of emotions compared to us. That's one thing that makes us incredibly special. The thing that makes the Earth incredibly special, it's called the jewel of the universe, which is just amazing to think about it when you think about how beautiful and amazing the universe is. Sorry, I'm starting to get emotional.
I dig it. It's okay.
Sorry, I talk about this stuff and I get emotional because it's absolutely beautiful to me. But anyway, what makes this planet special is this planet, as we are learning and finding out through various means, and we can get into that later if you wish. This planet is one of, if not the last bastion of evil in this entire universe. Okay, I just want to sit on that for a second. So go ahead.
Yeah, absorb that for just a second. So I remember you mentioned this to me yesterday. We chatted. This is not easy to take in. Okay, for the average person, the idea that, first off, I have to choose to believe that maybe other sentient life exists outside of this planet. From a scientific perspective, from an astronomer's perspective, the odds that we are not the only sentient beings in the universe are extremely high. The odds that we are the only planet with sentient life it's silly to think about how many life encouraging planets exist and that we're the only ones with sentient life, especially when you think about multidimensional string theory or any type of modern theoretical physics. The idea that we're the only ones that are sentient and we're the only planet that can maintain it is ludicrous, actually. So, but you can't get to full appreciation for how special we are and how special this planet that we live on is unless you first accept the idea that maybe we're not the only life in the universe, right?
You have to accept the idea. Actually, before you accept the idea, I think this is very, very important for our listeners, is everybody listening to this needs to develop and use discernment. So what I'm presenting to you is as true as I can possibly present it. It does not mean I'm 100% correct. In fact, like I said at the beginning of this call, my beliefs and what I have found out, as I start to believe something, well, that shatters an old belief. So obviously my belief has changed. I learned something new that either adds on or diminishes from what I think is true now. Well, my belief again morphs. You have to be open to the one thing you have to accept is the fact that you don't know anything. That is the first thing that I discovered when I came to what I call the spiritual path, when I fully committed myself to living a spiritual path. The very first thing I realized to myself, because it was shown to me, was, Joseph, you don't know shit.
Yeah.
Everything you think you know is meaningless and full of shit. And so once I found the humility within myself to accept that, admit that to myself, and actually admit that to others as well, once you find the humility to do that, your belief wall becomes permeable. And when it becomes permeable, at that point, you can actually start to take in new information and see what resonates with you. If it resonates with you, incorporate it into your belief system. If it does not resonate with you, reject it. Reject it completely.
So 2 things for our listeners. In case you're new at this type of conversation, I'm going to bring you into 2 terms that you just mentioned, Joseph, and give you my version of those. You can counter if you'd like. The first one that you use that some people might not be aware of or know what it means was discernment. I'm going to describe it from my view. You've probably had a gut feeling at some point. Like when you feel it in your gut, that's called intuition. Using that feeling to make a decision is called discernment. So your intuition combined with a choice to either, for example, keep your mind open about this idea or think that you and I are nuts is discernment. So I would encourage you. You can listen to the words we're saying, and that's fine, and make your choice based on pure logic. But when you get into the part of yourself that feels if something is true or not, now you're using your intuition, and when you make a choice to decide to still listen to this podcast, for example, and keep an open mind that what Joseph is saying or James is saying might be right, that's called discernment. So that's the first word that you used. Okay. And then the second one I forgot. I lost my train of thought. Probably not as important as discernment. But the point there is key. Discernment is a term that was used a lot in my upbringing. I was not brought up as Catholic. I was brought up as a holy roller, fully, Holy Ghost, Spirit-filled Christian. And discernment was used as a gift of the Holy Spirit to discern the name of an evil spirit or a demon.
Mhm.
So that's where discernment came from in my background. And I want to clarify that in your terminology just now, this isn't about the discernment of evil spirits. This is about using your own intuition and asking God within yourself if what we're saying might be true, and then keeping an open mind if the answer to that is yes. So sorry for pausing.
No, perfect. No, it's perfect. Intuition is the language of the heart. People describe it as a gut feeling, and that is it's acceptable. A gut feeling is acceptable way of describing it. People think that who we think we are, like our thoughts and whatnot, originate up here in our mind. They actually don't. They originate down here in our third chakra. And so, getting a hit in your gut is a very valid thing. Also, intuition comes from the heart. It is the language of the heart. So anyway, circling back, let's see. Okay, bring me back, James. What were we talking about?
And I think I may have lost my train of thought on that. I'm sorry if I did. Hopefully you got it still, Joseph.
I'll come back to it. One second. Oh, I wanted to. We were talking about beliefs. I do want to say something about beliefs as well. In order to understand what I'm going to say about beliefs, you have to understand this spiritual truth as well. Who you are is not who you think you are. It's not your ego, as I described earlier. Who you are is that spark within you. Well, what is that spark within you? It's a divine spark is what it's been described as, but I'll take it even further than that. It is God. It is a piece of God. And the way I view this particular third density plane of existence, and that's a lot of language people won't be familiar with, I know, and we can cover that later if wanted.
Yeah, we'll back to
but
that.
but when I say that is when I say third density life is basically our life as we see it right now, 3D life. Okay. This is the only plane of existence to where we do not know who we truly are. So below us, the animal kingdom knows who they truly are. The rocks and minerals and gems and everything else knows who they truly are. And entities above us who have evolved beyond this third density life know who they are. Fourth density, fifth density, so on and so forth. So this, our life, is the only plane of existence to where we are confused. And in fact, this plane is also called the plane of confusion. It's also called the plane of choice for a reason. And if I start getting into the reasons, we'll have to describe that and so on and so forth. But one thing I want to say is, if you accept the idea that below us, the animals, the rocks, and the minerals all know that they are God, and above us, all the higher entity beings, the angels and everything else, know that they are God, part of God, then let's take for a second, extrapolate from that we too are also part of God, that we actually are God, and therefore our thoughts, our beliefs actually create the reality that we live in. And I'll use an example for you. And actually, I'll use an example from my own personal life. I've got an older brother who him and I have had a falling out, and we don't talk anymore. But we were super close at one point in time. He grew up, and for the longest part of his adult life, grew up saying God doesn't exist. He was an atheist. There is no such thing as God. Whereas I've already described to you my background. Yes, I divorced myself from religion, but I never once divorced myself from God. I prayed and prayed and prayed and talked to God every day. So there's a very big difference between the way my brother chose to believe and the way I chose to believe. Now, what did that do in our lives? Well, he's going to say that I've been the lucky one. In fact, these are his words. My success is because of my luck. I've been extremely lucky, whereas for him, things have just been, everything that could go wrong can go wrong, so to speak. Whereas all my success is purely based on luck. Without luck, I'd be nothing. Well, think about this for a second and think about what I'm telling you. Your beliefs and your thoughts create your reality. So he grew up saying there is no God. God, understanding what all this life is about, says, okay, you're absolutely right. There is no me. And instantly around him, his belief has literally created an energetic barrier, 360 all around him, that is so strong that nothing new pertaining to God's existence will ever be allowed to come into his being because he simply won't allow it due to his beliefs. You want to say something?
I said that's deep, and it's, I had a similar experience. When I got divorced, I decided that either God didn't exist, or that God was not who I was taught he or she was. Because in order to believe that God was who I was taught he was, I couldn't get divorced. That was against my religion.
Mm-hmm.
So I literally chose to abandon my old faith and became an agnostic, for lack of a better term. And I was miserable. And I looked back at my old self and found just a dramatic shift in my ability to connect to people, my ability to feel. And it's only recently that I've gotten that back. And I've chosen to basically say, it's okay to not believe in the God that I was raised with, and yet to still believe in God and have a relationship, and to realize that what Christ said, which is just like we talked yesterday, that when he said, "You're my brother," and he said, "I'm the Son of God." I mean, why isn't that taught? Do you know what that means?
Mm-hmm.
If
I know exactly what that means.
Christ is my brother and he says he's the Son of God, that means I'm a slice of God.
That's exactly what that means.
But it's not taught.
Nope, it is not. It is not. And in fact, what's taught instead is that Jesus came here to save us. He came to save our sin. He died for our sins. Is like the most prevalent thing that I hear over and over and over and over again. And I simply do not believe that, because if you look at what, the people who edited the Bible, they didn't get all the good stuff out. There's some nuggets in there. So I'm definitely not throwing the Bible out, altogether. No. There's some good stuff in there. And a lot of the good stuff that was left in there, Jesus talks about. In fact, there's my favorite quote, and I don't have it memorized word for word. So you Bible scholars out there, you're gonna hate on me for this, but the gist of the quote is, "He who believes in me will do everything that I can do and more." Okay, he was teaching us through example what it means to be a human being in a world that is designed to keep you confused, to keep you away from the truth, and consequently away from God.
That's right.
He came into this world as an example how to navigate that and how to overcome it. And how he overcome it was through demonstrating to us resurrection, aka ascension. And he taught ascension. There are many quotes in the Bible that they did not remove that prove that Jesus taught ascension, and taught that that's what the whole purpose of all of this is about.
Ascension. We got to talk about that. We've got 8 minutes left, Joseph.
That's it.
Enjoying the heck out of this, by the way. But with the word ascension, that's a new age word, all right, to me.
Okay.
So I need help understanding that, all right? First off, what do you think of new age? I know we talked about it briefly yesterday, but for our listeners, tell me what you think about new age, and how does this word ascension apply to what you're talking about?
Okay, so for me, ascension is completely separate than new age. Like, it doesn't, to me, it does not have any connection whatsoever. Like I described to you yesterday, I believe the New Age movement, along with many, many other movements that we can name, are psyops. And again, a psyop is a psychological operation. So if you accept that this world has been and is run by dark forces, then there has to be a way, a mechanism for them to control us. Okay, and when you start thinking about and seeing about the how to how they implement this, these psyops are one of the ways. And what I believe the New Age movement is a psyop designed to wrangle in and catch all the people who are out there who are not of religion, who consider themselves spiritual and are seeking to know more, but really don't know where to go, what to look for, who to follow, who to trust, so on and so forth. And so they're easily captured and caught by this New Age movement because the New Age movement has incorporated and really co-opted for their own agenda positive teachings from other things, positive nuggets from other spiritualities.
So what agenda would that be?
The agenda is, as it always is, keep people confused and keep people away from the truth. And the truth is God. Again, this is all spiritual. Everything harkens back to a spiritual war between good and evil. Everything harkens back between us human beings being in this plane of confusion, in this plane of choice, figuring out for ourselves what the truth is versus the lie, and through our actions and our beliefs, really more our actions because our beliefs are immutable, through our actions in this world determine whether or not we have learned what we need to learn from here, we ascend positively, or we continue to follow the lies and become more and more confused, well, then we tend to go more toward the negative path.
So let's talk about that for just a minute. We've got 5 minutes left. I think we've come to a point now in this episode where if you're listening to this or watching it, your intuition is either telling you, keep listening.
Or you turned this off a long time ago.
Turned it off a long time ago. So we're at the last 5 minutes. I'd like you to give me some answers to some quick questions. All right?
Okay.
So, number one, do you believe in God?
For sure.
And what is God?
God is everything. God is love. Without God, there is literally nothing. What I believe God is, and I've had a direct physical experience, which I described to James yesterday, and we don't have time for it now, but maybe if we do another one of these, I'll
love this. Yeah.
So through my own personal experience, and how I envision this plane of existence working, my life, a lot of this is about me. I'm trying to figure out the truth of me. So if we all accept that we are God, what does that make us? Again, God. But really, what does that mean? So in the beginning, God wanted a way of experiencing himself, herself, itself, whatever you want to call God. So what it did was it divided itself into countless and numerous bits of itself. But all he did in that moment in time was create a bunch of clones of himself. So basically a bunch of puppets. Everything was God, so everything was going to do and behave exactly as how God was going to do and behave. Well, that didn't serve the purpose. That didn't give God the ability to experience himself. So what did he do then to those pieces of himself that he created? He gave them free will. And that's the distinction. That's where the separation comes in between us and the divine, is that free will that he gave us. And basically, the last piece of the puzzle was to incarnate into the physical existence with complete amnesia of who we are, where we came from, what we're doing here, what the hell is this place. And it's that amnesia coupled with the separation of ego and the true self, which then gives God the ability to experience God from a way that is completely independent. God's not pulling the strings on us. God never pulls the strings on us. God doesn't make us do something. We have free will choice. That is our divine gift. And everything in this world is designed to take you and strip you away from that choice, from your free will choice. That's part of the dilemma of this plane.
Let's talk about evil.
Okay.
What do you think about evil? Does evil exist?
Evil exists. Satan exists. Satan, as a being, I don't know exists. Lucifer as a being, I wholeheartedly believe exists. The Luciferian soul group, I believe exists. But I believe those exist not because they were created by God. Like, that's the thing is, a lot of people think, well, if God's all loving, how could he create something so evil? That's not what I believe. Again, he gave us free will choice. Some of those people with free will choice decided to go a different route, decided to rebel against God, decided that they were more strong than God, they were smarter than God, so on and so forth. God permitted this to happen. It's all part of God experiencing himself. And so evil exists on this plane only as so long as God permits it. And the only reason God permits it is to give us a choice to make in this life.
You can't have the yin without the yang, basically.
You cannot learn the positive without the negative. You cannot learn love without seeing pain, suffering, and everything around.
Yeah. We're gonna have to do another one of these, by the way. We're out of time. But
oh well, can I quickly answer? Just give a quick explanation of what ascension is, then.
Please do. Yes.
Okay, so let me round this out because I didn't actually answer what I believe ascension is compared to what the New Age movement purports it to be. Again, what I get this from is from Jesus' own teachings, as well as the teachings that are taught in the Law of One and a couple other pieces of information. So I quickly touched on it earlier that the rocks and the minerals and the plains all know that they are God. The animals all know that they are God. We are on a plane of existence that we are the only ones that don't know, and everything above us do know. So when God creates himself, when God divides off a piece of himself to create a new entity, that entity is the purest, most innocent form of energy that there is. But it knows nothing. So it incarnates, it has to go through the evolutionary, so to speak, cycle of returning to source. So from that, in that regard, when you come into the physical realm, when you first incarnate into the physical realm as a brand new being, you incarnate in what's called the first density, the first layer. The first layer is the rocks, the minerals, the gems, the lava, everything that makes the material universe material, physical. That's the first density of life. All that life has a consciousness to it. The rocks, the gems, the crystals, they do have a consciousness to them. It's not one that you and I would readily recognize, but they do have a consciousness to them. Once that entity, that life form, learns everything it needs to know from that particular first density, it ascends. Ascension simply means to go from one level of being, one state of consciousness to the next octave, the next layer, the next state of consciousness evolution. So the second layer that we described, the second density, is the realm of the animals. The animals, the thing that separates animals from humans is self-awareness. To the animal, there is no self. There is no I. Okay? To the animal, there's the herd. To the animal, there's nature. To the animal, there's God.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay, so once you learn what you need to learn on that plane of existence, you ascend to the third density. The third density is where we are all at right now. The plane of choice, the plane of confusion. This is the plane where I've described already, to where we come here because we've reached a certain level to where now we are learning the real lessons of what it means to be a loving human being. And this is where Jesus comes in. And Jesus' teaching of the ascension is, okay, if we're here and we are continually reincarnating on this particular plane for lifetime after lifetime, potentially hundreds, if not thousands of times, all of us have, whether or not you believe in it or not, leave your mind open to this. We have all been on this plane hundreds, if not thousands of times before this lifetime. We're all trying to get the lessons that we need to learn from this lifetime. We're all trying to get that so then we can graduate and ascend to the next level. The next level is basically the next state, the next evolution of what it means to be a human. Jesus showed us what that was. In fact, he showed us what that was 2 levels above us, which is the 5th density. When Jesus died, resurrected, and came back in his light body. Think about what I'm saying. Came back in his light body, not his flesh and blood body. Okay? He's able to materialize and dematerialize at will. He's able to completely control matter with just a thought. These are all things that we inherently have built into us because they are divine gifts. But you cannot just give everybody full access to the powers of Jesus, because without those entities understanding and learning and becoming masters of what it means to be human. masters of our emotions, anger. What happens if you give somebody the power of Jesus, the power to do whatever you want to somebody who's not ready, and that person gets pissed off and angry at somebody? They gonna smite them dead right there because they have that power? That's the difference. We need on this plane, this is a school as well as other things for this particular planet, but mostly it is a school. And we are to learn from this school 12, 13 different lessons to include things like compassion, empathy, faith, surrender. There's more, and I can't think of them all. But once we learn all that stuff and we master all that stuff, then we are promised, then we achieve what was promised to us by Jesus. And that is the inheritance of heaven, because anybody ascended above this realm, anybody that's fourth density and above, no longer have that separation between myself and God. There is no longer that separation. You are now in full consciousness. You fully understand that you are one with God. There is the difference. So that's what ascension is, as Jesus taught it, as the law of one teaches it. I keep referring to law of one. If nobody knows what I'm talking about, it's the law of one, the raw material. Highly recommend it. There's a couple of books here I have, but
after we chatted, I just ordered that. So
did you?
Yeah. Joseph Stedler, I'm gonna have you on again. Thank you so much for being on Spiritual Chaos. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right.
All right. Talk to you later. Bye.